I can't believe I'm doing this, Ember Sullivan muttered, tying the apron around her waist as she stepped behind the counter of the sleek downtown café. Her best friend, Lila, had begged her last minute. It's just one shift, Em. I swear, the Saturday crowd is dead except for that one guy who always orders the same thing and never talks. Ember sighed, adjusting her ponytail as she glanced at the clock. It was 3:15. She had exactly 2 hours to survive this shift, and then she could go back to her world of sketchbooks and unpaid art commissions. The bell above the cafe door chimed. She didn't look up at first. Welcome to Slate and Bean, I'll be right with you. No rush, a deep voice said. Her head snapped up. Standing in front of her was a man in a tailored navy coat, tall with dark brown hair swept back like he'd just come from a magazine shoot. His eyes were steel blue, sharp but tired, like he'd seen too much and felt even more. He wasn't smiling, but something about the way he looked at her made her forget how to blink. Ember blinked. He didn't. She fumbled with the register. What can I get you? The usual, he said. Her brow furrowed. I'm filling in. You'll have to remind me. That made him pause. You're not Lila? Nope. Just Ember. Temporary caffeine dealer. He looked at her for a second too long. Benedict. What? My name, he said. Benedict Calloway. She stared. Like the billionaire tech guy? He gave a faint nod, almost like he hated the label. I get that reaction a lot. That's because you're on the cover of every magazine in the grocery store. And yet this is the only cafe in the city that makes my coffee right, he said. Flat white. Oat milk. Extra hot. Ember got to work, a little thrown off by how normal he seemed. No security, no entourage, just a man in a coat who looked like he hadn't slept in days. When she handed him the cup, their fingers brushed. He looked down at their hands, then back at her. Thanks, he said, voice low. No problem. She tried to sound cool, but she definitely wasn't. So, no assistant picking up your order today? He hesitated. I needed air. She raised an eyebrow. He took a sip. And I didn't expect the barista to change. You seem very attached to routine. He looked at her again, more curious this time. And you seem like you don't belong behind a counter. That obvious? You've got paint under your nails. Ember glanced down. Busted. She expected him to leave after that, but he didn't. Instead, he moved to the corner table, pulled out a laptop, and stayed. For 2 hours. Every time she glanced over, he was still there, sipping slowly, typing occasionally, but mostly watching her. Not in a creepy way. Just enough to make her pulse flutter. At 5:30, she untied her apron and walked past him toward the door. You're done? He asked. Yeah. Lila owes me a week's worth of cupcakes. I'll make sure she gives them to you, he said. She stopped. You know her? She doesn't talk much, but she always writes my name on the cup with a smiley face. I figured she was nice. And now you're stuck with me. He stood slowly, folding up his laptop. I wouldn't say stuck. She laughed, brushing hair from her face. Well, good luck getting the perfect coffee tomorrow. I'll be here, he said, stepping closer. Will you? She hesitated. Probably not. I was just covering. He nodded once. Shame. Then he walked out the door. Ember stood there, heart racing. She hadn't expected anything from this shift. Not a famous billionaire customer. Not the way he looked at her. And definitely not the way she felt walking home. The next day, she was elbows deep in paint when her phone rang. Lila's name lit up the screen. You're not gonna believe this, Lila said. Benedict Calloway came in and asked for you. What? He didn't even order coffee. Just asked if Ember was working. When I said no, he left. Ember's heart thudded. You're joking. I'm not. And girl, that man looked like he hadn't slept since you made his drink. 2 days later, she got a call from the cafe manager. Are you available to pick up some extra shifts? A customer made a personal request. Ember knew exactly who. She agreed. When she walked in the next morning, Benedict was already there, sitting in the corner with 2 coffees in front of him. He stood when he saw her. I didn't know what you liked, he said, offering one. So I guessed. She took the cup. You guessed right. He smiled, really smiled for the first time. And just like that, the rhythm of Ember's days changed. She took more shifts. He showed up every time. Sometimes he brought her breakfast. Sometimes he stayed just long enough to say hi. Other times he sat for hours, asking questions about her art, her life, her dreams. He never talked much about himself, but she didn't care. He listened. He noticed things. He made her feel like the only person in the room. One morning, as she cleaned the espresso machine, she asked, Don't you have a dozen companies to run? He leaned on the counter. I do. And yet you're here. I've been to 1,000 meetings, he said. But this is the only place I've actually looked forward to walking into. She rolled her eyes, but her cheeks burned. You know that's a line, right? He grinned. Maybe. But it's true. Then one afternoon, he didn't show up. Not the next day either. Or the day after that. By day 4, Ember felt ridiculous. She was nothing to him. Just a girl who made decent coffee and could hold a conversation. He probably got bored. Or worse, remembered she wasn't anyone important. Then came day 5. And everything changed. She was wiping down a table when the cafe door swung open. Benedict stood there, soaked from the rain, eyes locked on her. Where the hell have you been? She blurted. He crossed the room in 3 long strides and stopped inches from her. I went to Boston for a board meeting. I came back tonight. I couldn't stop thinking about you. Her heart slammed. You could have said something. I didn't think you'd care. I didn't think you'd disappear. Rain dripped from his coat. His hair clung to his forehead. He leaned in closer. I've been in rooms with world leaders, Ember. But none of that felt as important as sitting here, talking to you. She didn't say anything. So he did. I like you? More than I should. And if I don't say it now, I'll regret it. Then he kissed her. Right there, in the middle of the cafe. And Ember kissed him back. Ember had never been kissed like that before, like the world had gone quiet except for the thunder in her chest. But it wasn't the kiss that kept her awake that night. It was the questions. What was she doing? What was he doing? By morning, she still didn't have any answers. And when she walked into Slate and Bean, Lila was already behind the counter, raising an eyebrow like she could see straight through her. You didn't tell me he was that kind of kiss, she said, not even pretending to keep her voice down. Ember pulled her hoodie tighter around her. He showed up out of nowhere, soaking wet. What was I supposed to do, hand him a towel and say try again tomorrow? Lila slid a tray of croissants into the display. He kissed you, didn't he? Ember didn't respond. Girl. That's a yes. She busied herself with the espresso grinder, hoping the noise would drown out the heat rising in her face. But none of it mattered because Benedict didn't come in. Not that day. Not the next. The silence stretched, and Ember started to wonder if she'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe it had just been one of those moments, intense and fleeting, like lightning on a power line. Until Thursday. She was walking home, hoodie pulled up against the wind, when a sleek black SUV pulled to the curb beside her. The window rolled down. Get in, Benedict said. She stared at him. That's your opening line? He leaned across the seat. There's a heater, and I'm driving you somewhere I can explain. Explain what? He reached over and opened the passenger door. Against her better judgment, she got in. The car was warm, almost too warm, and it smelled faintly of cedar and something darker, something expensive. She buckled her seatbelt but didn't look at him. Where are we going? She asked. I have a place in Tribeca. We'll be there in 5 minutes. She turned her head slowly. Your place? Trust me, it's the only place I can talk without being interrupted. Is this the part where I find out you have a secret wife and 3 kids? His jaw tightened. No. But there is something you should know. 5 minutes later, they pulled into a private garage beneath a towering building with glass that reflected the entire city skyline. The elevator required a fingerprint to operate. When the doors opened, they stepped directly into a penthouse that looked like it belonged in a design magazine. Dark wood floors, high ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the city like a portrait. Ember didn't move past the threshold. This is your place? He set his keys on a marble counter. One of them. She folded her arms. So what is it you need to say so badly? He walked to the windows, hands in his pockets, then turned. I don't date, he said. Not seriously, not ever. Okay. But I can't stay away from you. And if I don't tell you why, then I'm just dragging you into something you didn't ask for. A beat passed between them. Then tell me, she said. He exhaled slowly. Last year my brother died. Car crash. No warning, no goodbye. I spent months pretending I was fine. I wasn't. I still am not. But going into that cafe every day, just sitting there while you talked about things that had nothing to do with money or boardrooms or death. It was the first time I felt like I could breathe again. Ember's arms dropped to her sides. I didn't know, she said quietly. No one does. The press didn't get wind of it. I made sure of that. She looked around the apartment, the silence pressing in. You brought me here to tell me you're broken? I brought you here because I want you to understand what you're getting into if you keep saying yes to me. She walked toward the windows, staring out at the city. You think I scare that easily? He came up behind her but didn't touch her. I think you don't know the half of what comes with being near me. She turned. Then show me. His hand brushed her cheek, slower this time. You sure? I don't need perfect, she said. I just need honest. He kissed her again, softer, like he was still holding something back. When they finally pulled apart, she touched the lapel of his jacket. Do you always take girls to your penthouse to confess your trauma? No, he said. You're the first. Her eyes flicked to the massive painting on the far wall. It wasn't abstract like the others, it was a portrait. A man around Benedict's age, with a crooked smile and the same steel blue eyes. Your brother? She asked. He nodded. He wanted to build homes, Benedict said. Affordable ones. I was so busy making billions, I never took him seriously. After he died, I bought out 3 architecture firms and started funding the projects myself. Quietly. She looked at him again. You never talk about this. I don't trust easily. And you trust me? I want to. They stood in silence for a while, the hum of the city below like a distant heartbeat. Then he asked, Will you come with me to something tomorrow night? What kind of something? A fundraiser. Black tie. Boring food. Too many cameras. She raised an eyebrow. And you want me there? I want you next to me when I walk in. She hesitated. I don't exactly own anything with sequins. I'll take care of that. I don't need you to buy me a dress. It's not about needing, he said. It's about wanting you to feel like you belong there. She tilted her head. And do you? Not for a long time. She stepped closer, her voice softer. Then let's both pretend we do. His eyes lingered on hers. I'll have a driver pick you up at 6, he said. As she left the penthouse, Ember's heart was a mixture of nerves and something she didn't want to name yet. It wasn't love. But it was something dangerously close. And tomorrow night she was walking straight into his world. The dress arrived an hour before the car did, delivered in a white garment bag with her name embroidered in gold thread across the front. Ember ran her fingers over the fabric inside, stunned. It wasn't flashy or overdone. Midnight blue satin, with a neckline that dipped just enough to be daring. The tag had been cut out, but the buttery texture and intricate stitching told her it cost more than her rent. She slipped it on in front of the mirror, her heart thudding. She'd never worn anything like it. Never needed to. Her world had been filled with paint-stained overalls and thrift store sweaters. But tonight she wasn't just Ember the barista or Ember the struggling artist. Tonight she was his guest. The car pulled up exactly at 6, a sleek black town car with a driver who greeted her by name and offered her a small velvet box. She opened it on the way downtown. Inside was a single diamond pendant on a delicate chain. Simple. Understated. But undeniably valuable. She hesitated, then clasped it around her neck. The building they pulled up to looked like a museum, gilded columns, long red carpet, photographers already gathering outside. Her fingers curled around the edge of her clutch. What was she doing here? Then the car door opened, and Benedict stood waiting. He wasn't in a suit. He was in a tuxedo. Sharp, classic, and devastating. His tie was perfectly knotted, his cufflinks subtle but gleaming. His eyes found her instantly. "You look," he paused, "like the kind of mistake I'd make twice." She laughed despite herself. "That's your version of a compliment?" "It's the truth." They walked in together, his hand resting lightly at the small of her back. Inside, the space gleamed with crystal chandeliers and a champagne tower that defied gravity. Everyone was dressed to impress, but more than a few heads turned when they entered. "Why do I feel like I'm being evaluated?" she whispered. "Because you are," he answered under his breath. "Half the room wants to know if you're someone's daughter. The other half is trying to figure out if you're the reason I skipped the Davos panel last week." "You skipped an international panel?" "I had someone better to talk to." She blinked at him. "You can't say things like that when I'm wearing 4-inch heels. I might swoon." "I'll catch you." They were interrupted by a tall man in his 50s with a salt and pepper beard and a politician's smile. "Benedict, good to see you. And this must be Ember," Benedict said evenly. "She's with me." The man's gaze flicked to her, polite but assessing. "Of course. Well, enjoy the evening. We're hoping to hit the 7-figure mark by dessert." After he left, Ember leaned in. Was that a threat or a forecast? Both. The evening wore on with speeches and silent auctions. Benedict introduced her to a few people, founders of philanthropic tech funds, board members of international housing initiatives. But he kept close, his hand brushing hers when no one was looking, his eyes always finding her across the room if they were separated. At one point, she stepped out onto the balcony for air. The city stretched out below, glittering and endless. She wrapped her arms around herself, overwhelmed. "Too much?" he asked, appearing beside her with 2 glasses of champagne. She took one. "It's not the room. It's the way they look at you. Like you're already a headline." "I usually am." "And me?" He didn't answer right away. "You're not like them. You don't want anything from me." "Don't be so sure," she said, sipping. "I might ask you to fund my art one day." "Done." She turned, startled. "I was joking." "I'm not. I've seen your sketches. The one of the girl on the fire escape? That piece belongs in a gallery." She stared at him. "You looked through my portfolio? You left it open on the counter when you went to the back room last week." Her voice dropped. "That wasn't for you." "I know," he said. "But I looked anyway. And I haven't stopped thinking about it since." She didn't know what to say to that. He set his glass down. "Come with me." "Where?" "Just for a minute." They slipped past the ballroom and down a hallway she hadn't noticed before. At the end was a private library with velvet armchairs and floor-to-ceiling windows. He locked the door behind them. "I used to come here when I needed to disappear," he said. "From what?" "Everything." In the quiet, the tension between them shifted. It wasn't just attraction anymore. It was deeper. He looked at her like he'd found something he didn't believe existed. She stepped closer. "Why me?" Because you don't flinch when people talk about money. And you don't ask how much I'm worth. You ask why I can't sleep. Her throat tightened. He reached into his jacket and took out a folded envelope. I wasn't going to show you this tonight. But I made something for you. She opened it slowly. Inside was a rendering her fire escape sketch, reimagined as a mural on the side of a building. I bought the property last week, he said. I want the city to see your work. She looked up at him, stunned. You're serious? I've never been more. Her voice was barely a whisper. You can't just drop things like this on me. Why not? Because I don't know what this is yet. He stepped close enough that she could feel the heat of him. It's whatever you want it to be. She touched the drawing again, her fingers trembling. I don't want to be a project. You're not, he said. You're the only thing in my life that doesn't feel manufactured. She closed her eyes. This shouldn't be moving this fast. It already has. He kissed her again, but this time it wasn't about heat or mystery. It was about all the things he didn't know how to say. And when he pulled back, he didn't ask for anything. He just said, I'll take you home when you're ready. But Ember didn't want to go home. Not yet. Ember wasn't sure what surprised her more, that she'd stayed the night in Benedict Calloway's penthouse, or that she'd woken up to find him barefoot in the kitchen, wearing a plain black t-shirt and pouring coffee like he hadn't built a tech empire. She stood barefoot in the doorway, wrapped in one of his crisp white shirts, watching him. You're up early, she said. He looked over his shoulder, the corner of his mouth lifting not in amusement, but relief. Didn't want to miss your face when you saw the view in daylight. She stepped beside him, reaching for the mug he offered. Is that your way of avoiding the fact that we haven't really talked about anything since last night? I was hoping coffee would buy me 5 minutes before the interrogation began. She took a sip. You've got 3. He leaned against the counter, suddenly serious. I meant what I said. About the mural. About you. I know, she said quietly. That's what scares me. He didn't soften. Tell me what you're thinking. Don't edit yourself for my sake. She hesitated before answering. I don't know how to be someone who belongs in all this. I still owe rent on a studio that leaks when it rains. I don't have a 5-year plan. I barely have a 5-day one. You think I had a plan when I started? He asked. I created a prototype in a garage and didn't sleep for 4 days. The only difference is, when I failed, I had the luxury of trying again without starving. She looked at him carefully. And now? Now I have everything I once thought I wanted, he said. But none of it mattered until someone saw me without asking what I could give them. Ember set her cup down. You're not used to being challenged. No, he admitted. But I like it. She took a breath. I need to go back to my life for a while. Not because I don't want this, whatever this is, but because I need to know I'm not losing myself in it. He didn't argue. He just nodded once. Then I'll wait. You say that like it's easy. It's not, he said. But it's right. She dressed in silence, folding the shirt she borrowed, leaving it neatly on the bed. He didn't try to stop her when she walked out. He didn't need to. 3 days passed. She painted. She answered emails. She took a shift at the café. But the silence between them wasn't empty, it pulsed with something alive. Not longing. Not quite. More like gravity. Then, on the 4th day, she got a call. A woman's voice on the other end. Calm. Professional. Miss Sullivan? I'm calling on behalf of the Calloway Foundation. Benedict asked us to reach out about featuring your mural in the official unveiling of the new housing initiative. Ember's heart skipped. That's already happening? There's a press event this Friday. He asked specifically that you be present. He said you were the reason it's all coming together. When she arrived at the site, she nearly stopped breathing. Her sketch, The Girl on the Fire Escape, had been recreated on a building 3 stories tall. The colors were richer, the lines sharper, but it was still hers. Her vision magnified. And at the base of the mural, surrounded by reporters and city officials, stood Benedict. He was speaking to a group of kids crouched down so he was eye level with them, pointing to the building behind him. When he glanced up and saw her, he stopped mid-sentence. Then he stood, walked straight through the crowd, and didn't stop until he was in front of her. "You came," he said. "You made it impossible not to. They told me you hadn't responded. I didn't need to." He searched her face. "How does it feel? Seeing it this way? Like I finally exist," she said. "And not just in my own head." He reached into his jacket and pulled out something small. A key, on a silver chain. "What's this?" she asked. "Studio space. Top floor of a building we just finished. North light, exposed brick, no leaks. No strings." Her throat tightened. "You're giving me a studio? I'm giving you space to create," he said. "You don't owe me anything." She held the key tightly. "Why are you doing all this?" "Because I love you," he said, steady and certain. Her breath caught. He didn't blink. "I didn't mean for it to happen. But you're the first person who's ever seen me, not the money, not the name. Just me." She stepped closer. "I love you too. But you terrify me." He smiled, not playfully this time but with something deeper. "Then we'll be terrified together." Someone behind them called for his attention, but he didn't look away. She touched his lapel. "You're not going to disappear again, are you? Not unless you tell me to." She shook her head. "Don't you dare." He kissed her there, in front of the cameras, the crowd, the city. Not for effect. Not for spectacle. Just because he couldn't not. Later they stood side by side as the mural was unveiled to applause. The plaque beneath it read, "Hope in Color by Ember Sullivan. Commissioned with love and purpose." She turned to him. "You did this." "No," he said. "We did." And for the first time in her life, she believed it. Not because he'd given her anything, but because he'd shown her who she already was. And he'd fallen in love with that person. Exactly as she was. The gallery was buzzing. Not with critics or collectors, but with people who looked like they'd come straight from subway cars and fire escapes, the very souls Ember used to sketch on napkins and coffee sleeves. The space was raw, high ceilings and brick walls, the scent of fresh paint barely faded. Her name was carved into the metal plaque beside the door, but it still didn't feel real. She stood in the center of the room, surrounded by her work. Not prints. Originals. All of it created in the new studio, the one Benedict had given her the key to weeks ago. The pieces weren't about perfection. They were about truth. And people saw it. She watched it happen the way strangers paused in front of her canvases, the way their brows furrowed or eyes glistened. Benedict stood near the back, letting her have the space. He wore a matte gray suit, no tie, sleeves rolled just enough to show the tattoo on his forearm. The one she hadn't known about until he'd let her trace it with her fingertips after a late night on the studio floor. It was a line of code, one he said had changed everything when he was 19. She crossed the room to him, weaving through the crowd. "How did you do it?" she asked, not bothering to pretend she didn't know he'd had something to do with the turnout. "I made a few calls," he said. "Told them the girl who painted the soul of the city was finally showing her work." She narrowed her eyes. "You didn't tell anyone I was yours, did you?" "No. I didn't have to. You're not mine because I claim you in public, Ember. You're mine because we survived everything private." She looked at the people around them. "I thought I'd feel out of place. But I don't. That's because you're exactly where you're supposed to be." His hand slipped into hers, and for the first time, she didn't feel like she had to brace for the fall. Later that night, when the gallery emptied and the lights dimmed, they didn't go home right away. They sat on the floor between canvases and empty wine glasses, her head on his shoulder, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her knee. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "The chase? The thrill of the next big thing? I still have it, he said. Only now, the next big thing isn't an app or a merger. It's watching you decide what you're going to paint next. She tilted her face up to his. You sound like someone who's settled. I'm not settled, he said. I'm anchored. She let that sit between them. I was thinking, he added. We could convert the second floor of the building into a community art space. Free lessons. Open studio hours. Let kids draw on the walls if they want to. Her eyes lit up. You're serious? Dead serious. I already started the paperwork. But I won't do it unless you run it. Her heart skipped, but this time, she didn't question it. Only if we put a mural on the outside. Something huge. Something no one can ignore. You'll paint it? I'll design it. You'll help me paint it. He tapped his chest. I'm in. Her fingers curled into his shirt. I never thought I'd end up in a life like this. You didn't end up here. You built it. You just had the wrong audience until now. When they finally stood, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She gave him a look. You always have something hidden, she said. This one's different. She unfolded it. A deed. Her name in print. The building where her studio sat. Transferred to her. She stared at him, stunned. You bought it for me? No, he said. I bought it for us. But I'm giving it to you. Because you're the foundation now. She blinked fast. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Just keep making magic. She launched herself at him, arms tight around his neck, and he caught her like he always did with certainty. They walked out into the night, the city alive but quieter now. He hailed a cab, but she pulled him back. Let's walk, she said. He didn't ask why. He just took her hand, and they moved through the streets together. No flashbulbs. No headlines. Just two people who had found something rare in each other, and in themselves. Weeks passed. The community mural went up in stages. Ember taught kids how to mix color and trust their instincts. Benedict showed up every morning, coffee in hand, always ready to hold a ladder or paint base coats. The joy wasn't in the result, it was in the process. In the mess. In the laughter. One afternoon, as they finished the final brushstroke, a little girl tugged on Ember's sleeve. Are you married to him? She asked, pointing at Benedict. Ember laughed. Not yet. Benedict overheard. He crouched beside the girl. Should I be? He asked. She nodded solemnly. You're good together. He looked at Ember. Out of the mouths of babes. The next evening, he took her to the rooftop of their building. String lights. A table set for two. And no speech. Just a ring. Simple. Elegant. Exactly right. She didn't cry. She just said yes, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Because it was. They married in a garden behind the art space, surrounded by people who had believed in them from the beginning. Lila cried through most of the vows. Ember wore a dress she'd painted herself, tiny brushstrokes of blue and gold that caught the sunlight when she walked. Afterward, Benedict pulled her aside, away from the music and the speeches. You know what I realized today? He asked. What? There's no version of the future where I do anything without you. She smiled. Good. Because I'm not going anywhere. And she didn't. Together they built more than murals. They built a life. One rooted in art, in truth, in partnership. Because in a world full of fleeting things, they had found something permanent. Each other. Forever.